السنين دامت افراحش ودمت على نهج النجاح حاكمش معروف بالجود والفكر الرزين لبساش من جود كافه من العزه وشاح واعتلى بش قمة المجد بالفعل السمين واعتلى سيدش مثل ما اعتلى نور الصباح يا تميم ارواحنا ما تهاز ولا تلين هامة مهزها قوة هبات الرياح ظلنا يا من بها اللي نصال.
Welcome everybody, I'm Francesca Ragno for Arabian Insider. This is the second episode here in Qatar for the Qatar International Arabian Horse Show 2017. So today we had all the classes of colt and mares and it was a really interesting day. We just show you a bit of Al-Shakab as here we are in the inside arena. And today I was walking here in the VIP during the show and I wanted to ask to all the VIP table who was the horse that really meant something important for them. Everybody of us has a really important Arabian horse that means something that goes more just than to have a horse. So let's have a look about what people think.
Shaheen Awab, because he changed the face of the Arabian and straight Egyptian breeding program for me. His fillies that I bred, one purebred, one straight Egyptian, have been so far undefeated. In the first year, he's number 6 on the sires list of straight Egyptian sires, and hopefully, after my fillies being reserve champion, both in Scottsdale, well, one I don't own, I sold her, and so that should put him number 3 or number 2 in the world of straight Egyptian sires, and that's good for me and Al Wab Farm. And hopefully he has a son now that will be under Western Pleasure training with Perry Wilson in America. And we'll see what happens this year at the Egyptian event.
To me, it's probably Johara Knife, because she's a mare that I bred for the farm that I'm working for Al Nijstad. And she's also the mare that I became world champion with. She's my only world champion many, many years ago, but it's in my memory, you know. And she's a very important contribution, let's say, to our breeding program.
For me, it's Salwa Al-Zober. It was the first big show I did with Al-Zober, with Sheikh Abdullah. And every time I see her in the show, it's very special.
For me, the horses that meant the most to me was our own horses from home, from my parents' stable. And Signature, Silhouette, and Anna Nicole. Because it was the first time I go to the shows in Europe and show some horses myself. And I have a lot of success with them, and so this meant the most to me, yeah.
Well, Dawn and I have a special horse in common that most of your viewership isn't going to know or remember. But in the 90s, I had a gelding that was a national champion English Pleasure, and Dawn helped me with him a lot, and we won national championships in driving and everything. But more importantly than this great show horse, he was our pet and our play toy, and he kind of owned us, and he had our hearts, and we would turn him loose on the farm, and he wouldn't even get up to get a carrot. We had to take the carrot to him because he was such a spoiled little
nose sticking up above the railing of the box. They would just be taking his afternoon nap at like around 11 or 12, something like that, and Michael be schooling halter horses in the arena at Teleria, and the carrots were left on the railing. And I'd go walking by and I'd see this little nose stick up and there'd be a nicker, and then you'd have to get one and hand it to him. I think Michael schooling the halter horses was Rave's favorite time of the day because he was the performance horse, and he used to turn him loose when he was done working him. Like he'd get off riding him and he'd just turn him loose, and I'd call him and he'd come walking into the wash rack, walking through the barn.
Later in his life, I would turn him loose on my farm, and he'd run around and look at everything on the farm, and he would usually chew the flowers that I had just planted, and then he'd look at me.
But it was okay because Rave could do anything.
He could do anything he wanted. Or he'd go pick on the stallions, because he knew if he got in trouble, I'd come help him and not the stallions, because he was just... And then I would take him to horse shows and just turn him loose at my stalls. You were just at Scottsdale. You know how in the barns, everybody closes the front and we have the barn aisle? I would open the stall door and turn him loose. And he would just roam around and he'd maybe fight with another horse and look at it like whatever. And then one day he ran out of the stalls and down into the food court and disrupted all the bakers that were baking bread and stuff. And food was flying and Rave was just running all over the showgrounds in Scottsdale. But he did whatever he wanted, and we had such a great time with all those incredible
And he started as a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And went until
He was 17, yeah.
with amateurs,
spoiled
with
child.
everything,
was
amateurs driving, riding.
And he was a little bitty white horse with huge black eyes and perfect ears and a tail that stuck straight up in the air and it dragged the ground. He actually looked like a marshmallow with little feet because he was this perfect little fat little blob with feet. And
He was only a fat little blob because you fed him like that.
he could do whatever he wanted though. But his heart was as big as any Percheron or Clydesdale. He had the biggest heart because he won all the incredible prizes in the Open English division, but was
Open
just this
English amateur,
driving
combination, junior, all the junior classes. And how many national champions did he have?
20 maybe.
What was the name of this horse?
J.A. Rave Review.
The horse that was more important in my life was HC Francisca, which is owned now by Albidayerstad. She's a filly that we bred back home in Argentina, Legacy of Fame daughter. And she has like a whole story behind of her, like with my godmother, Gina Pelham, the owner of Legacy of Fame, and how the whole thing was, I had to go and pick up the semen and drive 700 kilometers. It was a huge mess. And, but the result was there. She was Ashman's silver champion filly, and I'm so proud of her coming all the way back from Argentina, halfway around the world. Small breeder that breeds like 5 babies a year, and that year we bred only one, and it was her. So she's special for me, and I'm really happy that Don has her, because I visited her last year and she was looking so good, and she takes such a good care of her that I'm really happy that she has her.
Marwan Al-Shakab, the king of the stallions. Why? He have attitude, strong, and he make me, I cannot explain it. That's it, Marwan Al-Shakab.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
I think everybody knows why.
Yeah. And he approved it when he produced all the stallions now by Marwan. And mares, the bloodlines, there is Marwan. He changed the horses.
My grey stallion means the most to me. He is by Simeon Sharaf, is a straight Egyptian, and Azil as well. And he has won in Europe, that is, quite a lot. And when there was a totally Azil competition for Azil horses, he became supreme champion. And he is now with Michelle Lyle, you know her, in UK, and he does dressage and will be shown in UK. It's events.
That's good, thank you. Before I say that today we had the classes of colt and mares, so let's have a look about the video and about the results, the atmosphere of the show.
same. Once you let it change. It's like a family chain. Part of you and part of me. And if we should separate, go your own way, I won't wait. Too good to be cruel. I play the part of the fool. When we should break all these ties, you won't see tears in these eyes. You'll see the difference now. If we change it, you'll know how.
Today we have something really important and special for you, because we decided to take two really important person, Michael Byatt and Dawn Martin, that are also really close friends, and interview them. So let's have a look about what they have to say.
My name is Dawn Martin.
Michael Byatt, 1967.
Don't remember exactly. Working with horses after university, probably 1984, professionally. My first job was at Carho in Scottsdale.
In Albuquerque, New Mexico, riding up and down the Rio Grande River thinking I was a cowboy.
Well, actually, I started with saddlebreds, riding them when I was young. And then, but my first job, as I said, was at Carho in Scottsdale, and I was actually a receptionist.
I had a little black pony that I didn't actually own a horse at the time. I rode my friends' horses just all up and down the river. We would start in the morning when the sun rose, and we would ride all day, and then we'd have lunch and ride back all along the river. So I never did halter. The halter thing was very accidental. I just loved riding horses.
I think Michael is one of the most talented horsemen I've ever met. He does performance, he does halter, he really gets in the horse's head, he has respect for the horses. I've seen him take halter horses that had been gone through and sour and, you know, that had been from show to show through other trainers and completely rework their minds to make them happy horses. And it's really interesting to watch. It's one reason why I always wanted to put our horses of Sheikh Mohammed with him.
Dawn and I go so far back, and when we started our friendship 30 years ago, both of us were animal lovers, and I knew Dawn for her value as a person who loved animals, loved horses, and cared about all of that more than the ribbon, and never was a person who allowed the process to interfere with the dignity of a horse. So she and I bonded really well because of her incredible love for animals. And even today, 30 years later, when I showed Mirage at the US Nationals and he was national champion, the thing that was the most important to me brought me back to 30 years ago. And she said that the ribbon was great, but the fact that her horse was happy, and she had the greatest tears in her eyes, and she was emotional. I think one of her fake eyelashes even fell into her eye or something and it got all steamy, but it just showed how much love she had, and she always has, because 30 years ago she was the same person, and that bond and love for animals, all animals, has kept our friendship on a really rooted basis.
Well, you know he's getting, I don't know if this is a bad word, but you know he's getting really mad when the vein pops out in his head.
When we used to go out at night, she couldn't fit her hair in my car. She's actually a natural blonde, And there was this television show, Charlie's Angels, and Farrah Fawcett was the big thing with the hugest hair. Well, Dawn, for some reason, was going to top that hairdo. So first off, she'd come out late because she was doing this with her hair, and then she had all the spray, and then her hair would get stuck on the roof of my car because it was this big, and I was always waiting for her when we were going out because she had to have bigger hair than Farrah Fawcett. That's it.
Well, I don't know if it's a funny moment, but I actually knew that his wife was pregnant with their first child before he did, because he was in Sweden at a horse show and she called me. I remember being in the lab at Teleria and the phone rang and it was Anne and she's like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And at any rate, it was because of the time change. I think she was excited and it was so far ahead, but I actually knew that she was pregnant with Griffin before he did. I'm not sure if he knows that or not. He does. He will soon.
I can't because you'd have to kill me. And I have some really juicy ones. And I can just tell your viewers this. If you get me really drunk one night, which I don't get drunk, but give it a try, because I've got some really, really, really great stories, but I can't tell you right now, because one of you would have to kill me. Hi, Dawn. Your hair is so flat these days. But not all of you. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Arabian Insider. We love. I can tell you a story about Dr. Arano. I was judging a horse show with him one time, and he said, my God, I went to Canada, and I smoked in the toilet, and they almost arrested me because I blew the whole thing up in the airplane, and all the signals went off and everything. So Francesca, your daddy's no angel because he was smoking in the airplane.
Thank you for watching us. We really hope that you enjoyed our second edition of Arabian Insider here in Qatar. Follow us in the next days, and tomorrow is the championship day, so don't lose it. I'm Francesca Ragno and we see us tomorrow.